Okay, thank you all so much for coming and joining me today. My name is Kristi Acorn. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a volunteer with the Women's Center of Halton. I come from a background in workplace wellness and fitness. I've been a wellness and fitness consultant for about 13 years, where I have been delivering corporate well-being programs for a variety of different clients. This is where my passion and my history resides. I'm now currently working in more of a strategic role for a resource group at a large telecom company that is an equity seeking group for team members who identify as female and their allies. So volunteering with the Women's Center of Halton has been the perfect fit for me to blend my interest in personal well-being and my desire to elevate and encourage and empower other women in my community. So it's my absolute honor to be here with all of you today and to deliver a version of the 3S of women's wellness workshop today that will hopefully inspire opportunities to take care of ourselves and to put ourselves first and to make sure that we are our own priority, because there's so many times that we get into the busyness of our lives and the shifting away from what our true needs are, that we tend to put a lot of other people first. And this is just a reminder that your time is valuable, your energy is valuable, and your health is valuable. And so I just want to start by commending everyone for being here, for showing up in any way, however you are, wherever you are, that you are welcome here, and that I am just so appreciative that you are here today. So with that, I'll let you know what we are going to be chatting about today. This is our agenda for our time together. We're going to start off with the first S of women's wellness, which is sleep. We're going to start to chat about why we need it and how we're going to get more. Two, we'll touch on what stress is, what happens in the body when we're stressed out, and how we can manage it. Then we'll move into self-care. This will be a conversation around why it matters and how we can build our own self-care starter kit. And then we'll finish off with a sharing session. And this is when we'll open up the mics and the floor for an opportunity to ask questions and maybe share what's working, what's not. And I'll try and answer any questions that you may have at the end of our time together. So I'd like to start off with just a little reminder of when we're thinking about, with our time here together today, is that don't forget to drink water and get some sun, because ultimately we're basically just houseplants with far more complicated emotions. So we can break it down to our basic human needs, but then also giving space for the complexities of what we have and what our mental health and well-being is really comprised of. All right, so we'll start off with our conversation about sleep, because there's no place like bed. If any questions do pop up during our conversation, feel free to drop them in the chat. We've got team members that are monitoring it on the back end. Plus, I'll pause at the end of each section that if there's any live questions that might pop up, or you can hold them till the end when we have our open sharing Q&A. Anything's available. So let's start off by talking about what the importance is about getting our beauty sleep. Essentially, Canadians are not getting enough sleep. And I don't think I'm shattering anybody's day by saying something like that. But 1 in 3 Canadians, that is inclusive for people who identify as women, men, and children, are sleep deprived. We're not getting enough sleep as a whole. And there's a lot of different reasons why that is. Specifically for women, over 50% of Canadians, women report having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. So you don't have to share out loud, but if you're thinking to yourself, I'm in that 50%, that's me, then no, you're not alone. But also know that that there's things that we can do to help bridge those gaps if sleep is a sore spot for you. I know it is for me. And it is so critical for our overall health and well-being. So that's why it is something that we should pay attention to and try to work through options and how we can maximize our sleeping habits. So when we think about good sleep hygiene, how do we take care of our sleep habits? How do we prioritize them? I want you to think about it as as important as exercise and healthy eating. A lot of us, when we think about what's wellness, or, what are you doing for your well-being? What are you doing to stay well? A lot of us go to those two primary elements. We think about exercising or physical activity, or we think about eating, our diet, our nutrition. But we don't always go to that third one. We don't always think about our sleep being as pivotal in those roles as maybe we should. So I want you to start to introduce a new concept into your well-being psyche, if it's not already there, of this health and wellness trinity: that sleep and exercise or activity or movement, whatever word you want to assign to it, anything that moves your body, and then what you put into your body. So what food you're eating, the nutrition you're putting in, the fuel in your body, those are three very equal and very important elements of our well-being. And essentially, why is this so important? Because our lack of quality sleep here is what's going to affect our optimal daily functioning. We all know what it feels like to try to function on a day that you had a really crappy night's sleep. We all know what that's trying to sludge through mud on those days, and that brain fog that we experience. I'm sure we've all been there many, many times before. Some of us are living that in a permanent state. So it really does affect how we show up each day, but it also affects our ability to fight disease and to fight off illness. And as we're coming out of the summer and heading into our cold and flu and COVID season, which is now a thing, is that we want to set our body up for the maximum defenses that we can give it. We want to set it up for success. And a way that we can do that is to prioritize our sleep. The way I explain it to my little kids who are 5 and 3 is that when you sleep, that's your body's time to sort of recover and to heal and to reset. Because when you go all the time, your body never has a chance to catch its breath. And so when we have that time to get enough sleep, then it allows our body to rebuild, to heal the damage that we've given to it during the day, even though it's minuscule damages or it can be significant. It helps us to build up that immunity and that protective response for our body. So I like to think about sleep as a tool and as something that is a protective device rather than a luxury, rather than something that we get lucky to have. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Anyone have said that before? Is that we need to be prioritizing getting that good night's sleep and getting enough sleep. And getting enough sleep is the $1 million question. That's usually what we follow up with. And when we talk about sleep, a lot of people, when we think about it, we say, sure, gotcha. Yes, I'm with you. Sleep's important, not questioning it. How much exactly? So there's a little sweet sleep spot here, and it is different between adults and children. So if you have children in your life, or you were a child at one point in your life, it does change. Those sleep needs do change, and it is important to respect that and understand that. So for the average adult, that little sweet spot in terms of optimal body protection and function, we're looking for that 7 to 9 hours. And that is a range. So it's, some people can function on less, some people need more, but in terms of a general range for most adults, that 7, 8, or 9 hours of sleep a night is the range that we're hoping to accomplish and to prioritize. Children do need more. They're growing. There's far more development at a faster pace than when we get into our adult years. So they do actually need more sleep. Their range is a bit broader depending on their age. It can be anywhere from 9 to 14 hours. And those of you that might have teenagers in your life, there is evidence-based information that teenagers do need more sleep because of that very fast growing frontal lobe development. So even though there might be that contention of teenagers sleep all the time, there's actual scientific reasoning for it. So the reason why we want to pay attention to these ranges are what happens to our body when we get more sleep versus less sleep. So if you notice that you're able to increase the amount of hours that you're sleeping every night, you're going to feel things like increased amount of energy, stamina, the ability to continually do different activities on a repetitive basis. You're going to feel more alert. Memory tends to be a bit better. We're more focused when we have more sleep. Our concentration is higher, and we tend to be more creative. So who doesn't want all of that? Sounds great to me. When we get less sleep, that's when we feel that lethargic energy. That's when we're really irritable. That's when we can sense that fogginess. Our focus is gone. Some of us might have headaches. Some of us might have digestive issues. Some of us might get sick more often. It's really important that we get really good at being aware of what our body is and how our body responds to those different demands. To see what happens when we do get that higher end of sleep versus lower, to really start to pay attention to how our personal body and our own physique responds to that. Everyone's a little bit different. These are general suggestions, general evidence-based scenarios, but only you know your body really well. So it's just important that maybe you take a look back and consider, what does your body look like and feel like and act like when you sleep more versus getting less sleep. So in terms of how to create this sensational sleep hygiene, it's really important to sort of categorize and think about which one you see yourself in. So I know there's a wide range of sleep habits here, but a lot of us have heard of the statements that I'm either an early bird or a night owl. So if you think that you're an early bird, that's someone who likes waking up early, who likes to be up early, that feels energized earlier in the day. This is not me at all, but I so respect and admire those people that are early birds. If you're in that category, then here's some tips on what helps your body based on being awake earlier and being exposed to our daily sunlight at an earlier time based on our circadian rhythms. So a really important thing for early birds is to put the phone away before bed. And that's because of the blue light that comes into our bodies, and it can really shift what our circadian rhythm is feeling. And it kind of tricks us to think that it's still light time out. So because we've been awake for so much longer, I say we like I'm up early. No, those that are up early and enjoy it, it shifts that timing. So it is really important that those early birds do make a conscious effort to have dimmer light on their phones or put the phone away right before bed, so it doesn't trick you to thinking you need to be awake longer. You do need to be more cautious when you're driving later in the day because you're starting to fatigue earlier in the evening because you've been up earlier. Just exercise extra caution if you are driving into the evening or when the light starts to go down. And that it is really important that when you do wake up, that you introduce some intentional movement into your mornings. It can just set your body and your mind and your energy into the right direction if you embrace that time of being up early. And what I find for those that are early birds is that there's a really exciting and special feeling of those early mornings, that it's just a little bit quieter than it is throughout the day. It's more peaceful. There's less people out. So if there's an opportunity for you to embrace that silence, that quiet, maybe it's getting outside to watch a sunrise, maybe it's to just sit in silence in your home, that you can really enjoy that space and that time. If you are a natural early bird, I say lean into it, enjoy it, and see if there's a way that you can capitalize on that rhythm that your body is naturally craving. On the flip side, if you're like me and you are an absolute night owl and you get all your creativity and all your energy at the end of the day, again, let's not try to fight who we are. Let's lean into who we are. So what works well for night owls is actually getting up at the same time every day. Whatever time that is, it's giving you that consistency across the board, so that you don't have to fluctuate too much in your circadian rhythm by staying up later at night. To help night owls fall asleep at a reasonable time, caffeine within 3 to 6 hours leading up to bed can hinder our ability to fall asleep. So if we are staying up later, we're enjoying that late night time, we don't want to push it so late that we're cutting into when we need to get up in the morning. So avoiding that, dose of caffeine 6 hours leading up to your sleep time can really help you fall asleep faster. And then I love this concept of creating a sleep sanctuary. And this is creating your space where you sleep to something that is so comforting and so inviting and so safe for you that when you get in there, it just creates that calming energy. And that can be anything that creates calm for you. It can be the lighting, it can be the blankets or the pillow or the surface that you're sleeping on. It can be smells or scents or things that you're looking at. Whatever that creates calm for you, put it in that sleep space. And then that triggers your mind to get into that relaxation mode and can help you fall asleep faster. This is a fantastic yoga pose or positional pose that most anyone can take advantage of if they're having trouble getting into that calm state of bed. This is a really effective position that you can get into, that you can lie either on a flat surface on the floor up against a wall, or maybe on your bed and flip your feet up against the wall. There's lots of ways to modify this as well. The person in this picture has straight legs. You can do this with knees bent as well, if that's a less strain on your hamstrings or your back. But what this does is it's a very gentle and calming position. Almost all bodies can do this in some way, shape, or form with appropriate modifications based on what you're comfortable with. If you don't like your head being at the same height as your heart, you can always roll something and place it under your head so it's a little bit elevated if that feels more comfortable for you. And all it takes is about 5 or 10 minutes, and it just allows the stress and the blood flow and the tension that we carry in our feet that hold us up all day. It allows that to drain, and it sends that blood flow into your center and into your heart. And if you think about it, all your important organs are in that center spot of your body. So it allows your blood flow to come into that center. And that's where a lot of your immune system lives. That's your gut. That's your home, your center. And having that blood flow and that energy go into that center can really help facilitate that healing energy. Plus, it's nice to lie on your back in terms of letting that sense of relaxation come over you, closing your eyes, listening to some calming music. You can add in a hot water bottle if you like, or a weighted blanket, anything that's going to create that sense of calm and relaxation. But this pose is very, very effective to reduce both anxiety, tension, and can also be a great stress relief. So for those of us that are going to bed with a million thoughts in our head and we just can't stop it, this might be that reset of, I'm sitting here, I'm going to set a timer, I'm going to listen to some soft music, or I'm going to open my window and hear what's going on outside to allow that decompression before we get into bed and hopefully bring on a welcome and refreshing night's sleep. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Would love to open it up if there's any questions or any things in the chat. I'll pause and I'll pop over to Lindsay and just see if there is any questions that have come up in the chat. Oh, Lindsay, you're on mute.
Oops. I don't see any right now, but I can just give it like 30 seconds if anybody is like typing one in right now.
Perfect. Okay.
May I speak, please?
Yay, of course.
I'm not sure. Oh, everything's at the bottom there now. I wasn't sure how to do it. I've had a problem with sleep for years, and I pretty well know everything that you went over. I do the legs up the wall, and I'm having a very hard time, and I've had to take something, and I'm trying to get off and it's really difficult.
Yeah. Are you in conversation with your primary healthcare provider, your
I am, but
or consultant?
she just wants to prescribe more sleeping pills, which I do not want to take anymore. That's why I'm trying to get off.
Gotcha. So you're raising a good point that, there are pharmaceutical solutions for helping with sleep, depending on what the source of the issue is. So in terms of other habits that can be done, it depends on also if your problem is falling asleep or staying asleep, or is it both? Both. So it would be really personal in terms of prescriptive. What might also work is a little bit, maybe not a direct cause of, I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm going to go see my doctor. I'm going to talk to them about my sleep, and then I'm going to figure out the solution there. But because there's such a strong connection between our mental health and well-being and our ability to fall asleep and stay asleep, is possibly talking to someone, some sort of mental health professional, a support group, or a professional. Because personally, what I found is that if I was able to apply solutions in my daily life that would help reduce my anxiety and my stress, I was able to carry those into my sleep habits. So if I could resolve what was causing me stress during the day and I had another outlet, it wasn't left for me to deal with when I was ready to go to sleep.
Makes sense. Do you offer the services of consultation? Like,
No, I'm personally not a sleep expert. I would say I'm general well-being from a general population, but I'm sure there's lots of references within the Women's Center in terms of local health services, as well as peer support groups. Lindsay, you can maybe top up on what's available through the center, and then possibly, turning into a more professional relationship, depending on what your needs are.
Yeah, I don't know any support groups just like off the top of my head, but if you just send me your email in the chat, I'm happy to follow up with you with any resources that we might have.
okay, actually, could I get your email, or is it the same one that we got on to this today?
It is, yeah.
Okay, because for some reason, I'm not sure how to do it. I should know how to do that.
Yeah, so it should be the one that sent you the link today.
Okay, so just, get a hold of that.
Yep.
Email. Okay, thank you. I will. That's great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. My pleasure. And I'm seeing another couple of questions that are popping up. One is, what do you do if you sleep too much? That is an actual problem. I know it seems silly for those who are on the spectrum of, I don't get enough sleep, but I'm sure you felt that of the oversleeping, and it can make you feel overtired. I would go back to that range, that 7 to 9 hours of, that's the sweet spot for most adults. If you need to shave off an hour here or there because, you try it out for a couple weeks and see, my sweet spot is 6.75 hours. That's when I feel my best. That's great for you. So then I would just take a look at where in your schedule you can either enjoy some quiet time activities leading into your bedtime, or maybe setting your alarm, a little bit earlier and enjoying that, a morning meditation or a morning stretch to sort of get that sweet spot of sleep, but also remembering that there's other forms of rest that are not being unconscious. So you can have restful activities that are calming and decompressing that are not actually sleep. So I know we tend to zone in on that sleep sweet spot, but you can also really do a lot for your body by being in those stress-free, personal time that is at night or in the morning, but that is restful. So that might help in terms of the being overtired and sleeping too much. I feel this question on a personal level, being a night owl, but you have to wake up early for work or other types of needs. So what works for me, this is a personal need. I have a set wind down bedtime. So I've got a timer that goes off that says it is time to wind down for bed. It took a while to figure out what that time is and how much time you need to wind back, whether it's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, you figure that out on your own of what your lifestyle is and where that fits in. But that's the hard and fast rule of I need to start getting ready at this time so that I've got the time to chill out and that I can plan to, have my lights off by a set time. And it will be a little bit of trial and error where you'll know what that sweet spot is for you. Again, going back to the sleep range. But then what are those activities that you like to do that help you fall asleep? For me, it's reading. Being in that one light on, reading a book until I KO is what works for me. So I think it would be a little bit of that experimenting of what time do you need to start your wind down routine? What time do you want to be lights out, asleep by? And then figure out that routine from there and then get into a consistent habit. You can also take it where if, getting into a habit is difficult because it's hard, but you can also you can establish some rewards and or punishments. So an example of that is if I got into bed at my time, then I would allow myself a special flavor in my coffee in the next morning. So it was my perk for doing a good thing. So if you like to reward yourself with positive reinforcement, that's an idea. If you are more of a slap yourself on the wrist kind of person, maybe if you don't get into bed at that time, then in the morning, you're not allowed to check your social media. So you can start to think about those ways that you can personally reward and or, I don't like the word punish, or, help yourself learn your lesson to get that habit established and do it for about 2-3 weeks. And that should get you onto that right, should hopefully help establish there, but don't get worried if you get off track. We're human. It's very much a part of it. And it is a learning game. So I would give yourself the space to experiment and find ways that will work for you in your lifestyle. Oh, there's a great suggestion in the chat about a sleep consultant on Instagram, Somnolence Plus. Fantastic. So if anyone is on Instagram and wants to follow that, that's great. We've also got a comment about therapy services through the Women's Center, a great start to venturing into mental health care, as well as in terms of talking about what's on your mind, dealing with stressful events and situations. Amazing. Thank you all so much for that. If there's any more questions, let's hold them until the end just so we can keep our conversation going. And I'm happy to revisit back if there's anything that pops up in the meantime. All right, so let's shift our focus into stress because we definitely need to break up with the relationship that we have with stress. So what happens when we're stressed? I'm sure a lot of us are probably familiar with the fight or flight response. Some may know that there's fight, flight, freeze. Maybe we also know that there's 4 phases of this section where we can put up a fight, we can fly away, we can freeze on the spot, or we can also enter a 4th phase called fainting. So what will generally happen in these sessions, and these are general observations, these are not 100% true for every single person, but when we get into that fight mode, this is generally that buildup of energy and that buildup of adrenaline. We want to protect ourselves. So what happens in our body is that our muscles become quite tense and stiff, but what also happens in our mind is we tend to get into more perfectionistic thoughts. So this might the mental chatter that might be happening when we're in this fight mode is, I need to be better. I need to do more. I need to show up in a way that's more than what I'm doing right now. Okay. Then there's also the option of flight. This is I want to run away. This is, I want to get away from the stressor. I want to physically avoid it. I want to mentally avoid it. I will do absolutely anything to distract myself from the situation so I don't have to deal with my actual feelings. Anxious. This is the anxiety piece, the worrisome thoughts that tend to take over. And so the mental narrative that might be taking place in this section are, I can't do this. I can't handle this. This is not for me. I'm out of here. Then we've also got this freeze phase here where we might have that difficulty Our body might actually be not able to move on. We might not know where to go. We might be completely stuck of, I'm just lost. I just feel like I don't know my next step and I'm not sure where to go from here. So the mental narrative we have going on in our head is, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't have any solutions right now. I don't know if I want to run away or if I want to lean into it. No clue. And then lastly, we've got this phase called fainting. This is essentially when stress or anxiety just becomes so heavy that we can feel drained and tired and just exhausted. And this can be manifested physically or mentally. Mentally, our internal chatter tends to be very self-critical. It tends to be, I'm a failure for struggling. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough to hold on to this. I'm just not good enough to live up to these challenges. I give up. Okay, so these are all very common and very well documented responses to stress that we can find ourselves fluctuating between at various points of our stresses in our daily lives. So I'm going to quickly go over just to kind of give the understanding that stress really is a systematic response. It doesn't just affect one part of our body. It really has an impact on our entire physique, internally and externally as a whole. So some things that we might be aware of in terms of what happens when we're stressed. The immune system is what keeps us healthy. It's what helps us fight off infection. So when we're chronically stressed, this can make us more susceptible to viral infections for colds and flus and other types of infections. It can also take us a lot longer to recover from sickness or illness or injury when we have a depleted immune system. And anybody that has had been immunocompromised or have been chronically stressed and you just can't get over that cold or that flu, stress has a real role to play in that. With the central nervous system, this is all of your nerves feeding into your heart. And you might notice this by your heart rate speeding up. So when you feel that stress or that anxiety, you might feel those heart palpitations getting a little bit faster. And the reason why it does that is your heart sending blood to the body, areas of the body that need that response. So they might send them to your hands or your feet, might send them to your gut. And so it does increase that rate in order to pump more blood to those areas as a protection. If it's not permitted to return to that resting state, that can lead to over or under eating. It can lead to relying on external substances to calm us down. It can also lead us to withdrawing socially to provide that sense of calm without external stimulation. When we think about our respiratory and our cardiovascular system, our heart and our lungs, it's very closely linked to the central nervous system that I just said, where our blood flow and our breathing rate will increase. And so what we see in people with chronic stress that doesn't seem to go away is that our heart and lungs are constantly stimulated. This can present as raised blood pressure, which can increase our risk of heart attack and stroke. When we think about our digestive system, this is all of how we digest our food. Specifically, we look at the liver because we get more glucose that gets produced when we're under stress. And that's so that we get more energy to deal with the stressor. Chronic stress inhibits this ability to handle all that extra glucose, which can then lead us to a higher risk for type 2 diabetes. The physiological changes that can happen from stress, specifically in our digestive system, some of us might feel that heartburn or acid reflux when we're stressed. There can be gastrointestinal discomfort, gassiness, bloating. Irritable bowel syndrome is very closely connected to stress, so it can really wreak havoc on our digestive system, which is not pleasant for anybody, let's be honest. When we think about our muscular system, we tend to have those muscles tense up that they do that as a protective mechanism to prevent us from injury or stress. Constant tension could lead to headaches. A lot of us carry our stress in our back and our shoulders, just tends to go that way when we're stressed out. Some people's bodies just ache. There can be an increased need for pain medication or for more increased need for rest because that body is so ready to protect itself all the time. And then lastly, with reproductive systems, it is well documented that stress can affect our menstrual cycles, leading to irregular, heavy, or painful periods, and chronic stress can magnify the physical symptoms of menopause. There's also some belief studies that chronic stress can affect fertility rates. So it definitely has a systemic impact. It's very different for a lot of people. Everyone's going to experience it differently, but it is important to understand that it's not an isolated impact, that it can present itself in a variety of different ways. And that's why it is important for us to pay attention. So what I like to separate here is understanding the difference between a stressor and stress. A lot of the times we use those terms interchangeably, but I think it's really effective if we think about them separately. So a stressor is what happens to us, and that causes a reaction. So our work can be stressful if we're getting ready for a wedding, if we have children, if we're divorcing, if we're dealing with a death in the family, losing our jobs. Those are things that happen to us, okay? The stress part is the reaction to the stressor. So the stress is what we feel and the symptoms that we exhibit. So that's the headaches that we get, the butterflies in our tummies, the shallow breathing, our appetite changes, our sleep getting disturbed, okay? So when we are dealing with either one, it's important that we deal with the stressor first. So start with the scenario, start with what's happening outside of the body and identify what you can and cannot do about that stressor. You can make a list where you can say, this is what I can control, this is what I can't. You can do a little circle or whatever visual or exercise works for you to identify what you can do about the stressor. Start there, okay? Then it's sort of like a trickle effect. Then we can help manage the stress within our body. That's where we can focus on breathing exercises. That's when we can change our diet. That's where we can focus on our sleep. And it's usually when we focus on the actual external focus that we have that control over the internal response. Many of us will only focus on the stressor. We forget about the stress. We forget about the lingering effects of what's happening in our body. So what examples of what you can do about the stress that is existing in your body once you've handled the stressor are these 6 things. So you can focus on your nutrition. So a couple of things that you can make sure that are in your diet because of their ability to help with your body is vitamin B, omega-3s, magnesium, and protein. Those are all elements of a balanced diet that can really help boost up your immune system. They help with your brain function, and they can help with your energy as well. We want to try and find some ways to move. And this is for an energy release. This is not to look a certain way or be a certain size. This is to exert energy and to move your body in a way that feels joyful and makes you feel happy. Connection is for within your friends, your families, your community. Maybe it's giving back, maybe it's spending more time with certain people, but that can have a very profound effect on the stress in our body. Creative expression can be very, very effective for dealing with the stresses in our body. Examples of this might be journaling or doing crafts, building something, organizing, cooking. I love puzzles and audiobooks. So it can really be anything that allows you to creatively express and sort of distract from the stressor in your life so that the stress in your body can chill out a bit. Mindfulness practices are very effective here. This can be practicing meditation if that works for you, maybe adopting a gratitude practice of writing down what you're grateful for. You can engage in a meditation with seating, lying down. Walking can be meditative, coloring can be meditative, knitting it can be meditative, and also identifying or sharing what makes you happy and what you're grateful for can be very effective too. And then, as I mentioned before, it's that control element of identifying what you can control versus what you can't, knowing where you might need to set a boundary of where you need to protect yourself and hold to them. Other ways of thinking about it are, what's a you problem versus a them problem? What can you do about it versus they've got to deal with it? And also managing your expectations going into a situation. If there is, you're trying to get somewhere and there's really heavy traffic, you can't control the traffic flow, but you can decide what route you take. So you might choose a route that allows you to drive more. You might choose to put on a song that you really love. So you're changing the reaction to that uncontrollable situation. If somebody in your life causes you anxiety for whatever reason or makes you feel stressed out, you can limit your time with them. You can decide how much of that person you want to have in your life, whether it's day, week, month, and then decide what boundary you're going to set in terms of, this is how long I'm going to be talking to you for. This is when I'm going to engage with you. I need to make sure that I've got a full cup of coffee or a good night's sleep before we go and hang out. To starting to think about ways in which you can exert that control so that you can first deal with the stressor and then manage the stress. So I'll pause there. I'm going to take a look at the chat and see what has come up. All right. See, oh, fantastic. So there's a document that's been shared on mental health. Wonderful. And Spanish version, to the best of my ability. Well done. Any other questions or comments that have come up? Okay, awesome. All right, well, we'll move on to our last S, and then we'll keep some time for open Q&A at the end. So lastly, we're going to talk about our third S is self-care. And I just love this visual of almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. If your computer doesn't work, if your phone's not working, if your TV's not working, what's the first thing that IT will suggest to you? Unplug it and plug it back in. Same thing for ourselves. So the reason why self-care is so critical is not just because it's super trendy and it looks amazing to have a big bubble bath with a big glass of red wine and fluffy slippers, and that's all fine and good. But why self-care is so critical is it encompasses our whole mental health at the core of it. So self-care is a practice. It's activities, it's choices, it's conversations that we have, it's word choices. And what that influences, it's ultimately building up our resilience. And I'll get into what resilience is in a minute. But the reason why that's so important is because at the core of all that is our mental health and our mental well-being. So I like to think about, what self-care can be, but also why it is so critical to prioritize it. And that's because it really feeds into what our mental health looks like and can help define where on a spectrum of mental health or where on a continuum of mental health, where we can find ourselves depending on our life situations. So the brilliance of resilience here is that self-care is a critical priority to help influence our resilience and promote our positive mental health. Resilience is an actual psychological quality that allows some people to get knocked down, but to rise up from that challenge. It's that ability to bounce back, that ability to pick ourselves up when we've been knocked down. It's that ability to embrace challenging situations and finding productive ways to move forward. So those people that are considered to be highly resilient, they find ways to change course. They will find ways to prioritize their emotional healing when they go through stress or trauma, and they are committed to continuing moving forward in the face of adversity. And whether you identify as a resilient person, whether you know someone who's a resilient person, I hope you're recognizing some of those qualities either in yourself or others around you. This is personally, I think it's essential for women to cultivate this sense of resilience, because our stress is inevitable. It is, for whatever reason, whatever our life situation, those stressors are going to happen. There's no way around it. We can try and hide away from it, but it's just not reasonable to expect we're not going to have any stressors in our life. So what this can do for us is it helps us prepare for those stressful situations so that we've got the tools to respond to them. So I like to think about resiliency and the skills that come with it are like a little toolbox, a little, tool shed or a tool belt that we can call upon and use whenever we feel those stressors are coming at us. Resilience is also critical to preventing burnout. Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, physical exhaustion that is resulting of prolonged or repeated stress. We see this in professional workplaces. It's very, we're seeing it a lot in the healthcare industry and the education industry right now. It's been so long and so much that a lot of people are leaving those professions because of that burnout they're experiencing. It happens in parenting. It can happen in caretaking of a family member, an elderly family member or a friend, and it can also happen in relationships too. So it is critical that we recognize that it can pop up in any of those scenarios and beyond, but that having those skills of building our resilience can really help us offset the risk of burnout, which is very, very serious condition. So one way that we can build our resilience is to change our self-talk narrative. So it's changing the way that we talk to ourselves about ourselves. And this is a tool that I like to consider as a part of self-care. So in addition to the bubble baths and the fuzzy slippers, the way that we talk to ourselves is a form of self-care. So when we go back to that stress response, we've got our fight, flight, freeze, and faint responses to stressors. We can change what we say to ourselves that can be very protective for our mental health. So when we're in that fight mode, that, holding ourselves up to higher standards, maybe instead of saying to ourselves, I need to be better and I need to do more, what if we told ourselves, I trust myself to let go? When we're in that flight mode and we've got the anxiety thoughts and we say to ourselves, I cannot handle this. What if we told ourselves, I'm here and I'm present, and that's it for now, and that's good enough. When we're in that freeze mode, when we get those worried thoughts that hold us back and we say to ourselves, I don't know what to do. What if we flipped it? What if we told ourselves, I'm safe, I'm whole, I'm okay. And then lastly, when we're in that faint mode, if we feel like we're just depleted and deprived, we're very self-critical, instead of calling ourselves a failure for having a hard time, what if we shifted it? And what if we told ourselves very simply, I'm enough? So flipping the script and changing the narrative can be an incredibly powerful tool that no one really needs to see. And it can hold this incredible power of the way that we talk to ourselves about ourselves, which then translates to how we speak about and talk to other people, which can change our entire energy. So other ways that we can think about creating our self-care starter kit is not only to think about our internal storyteller, but also externally. What can we bring into our lives that will allow us to take better care of ourselves? So this is a very long list. It is a non-exhaustive list, but there's lots here. And I don't want you to get overwhelmed, and I don't want you to be like, I need to do every single thing every single day. You will burn out super fast. All I would advise is to pick 2 or 3. You know, you take a look at it, you see what jumps out at me. What do I think I can, you know, reasonably engage and add into my day? What excites me when I see this? When I read it, I think calm. So for some people, playing with kids, anxiety through the roof. That is the last thing I need. For others, you know, taking a walk is like, all right, well, yeah, I do that on a regular basis and I'm still super duper stressed. So maybe you need something a little bit different. So I encourage you to, you know, take a look at this particular list, pick 2 or 3, or create your own. There's really no wrong way to, you know, take care of yourself, as long as you are doing it, as long as you are doing something that brings you joy, that makes you feel calm, and that makes you feel happy and pleased with yourself. That is the critical takeaway piece here. So, and I'd also like you to acknowledge what you're already doing that maybe you're not giving yourself credit for. Maybe you're already switching off super early at night and, you know, you don't really realize that you are. That's a fantastic thing that you can do. Showing up for something like today, this is a form of self-care. You're giving yourself time to do it, even if you're multitasking, even if you're going to watch the recording later. That is something that you're doing for you. Okay, so I encourage you to take a look, find what works for you, reminding yourself that what works for somebody else might not work for you, and that's okay too. But that prioritizing yourself, your needs, your desires is going to go a long way. And it is so critical because you matter. So with that, I will pause. I'll check out the chat, see if there's any questions here, and I can also open the floor if there are any questions, comments, concerns, clarifications that we might need on stress or self-care. All right, everyone, thanks again, and I wish you all a happy and healthy day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
And thank you so much, Kristi.
My pleasure.